Ahmed Buhari, politician, public affairs analyst, is standing by. I'm also joined by Okpara Julius, a domestic election observer. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Happy election day.
Thank you very much.
Hope you've been finding it quite interesting and eventful. So you've been to some 20 polling units in the Kosofe area, local government area in Lagos. What did you observe?
Well, it's been a more seamless process at the polling units that I have been to from the morning to this afternoon. People turned out to vote, men, women, and the youth as well, came in, but not as large as what we had during the presidential elections. And people came out and then willing to exercise their franchise.
There was delay in the arrival of INEC personnel and materials 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Was there an improvement today in Kosovo?
Yes, largely there is a measure of improvement, based on the places that I've been to, that I've visited the early hours of this morning. I have records of INEC staff arriving at 9, some that arrived at 10.
9 is late, by the way.
9 is late, 8:30 is when it should be.
Yes.
I also have a polling unit where other people arrived at 8 o'clock on the dot and waiting. They said they left quite early and they got there, very early and they waited. So it's a potpourri of, based on what logistics and all that have been put in place. But largely, I would say it's an improved version of what happened for the last time in terms of time, in terms of arrival, and also doing their work the way that is supposed to be done.
I was on Sunday at Igun Street myself. There were about 3 or 4 polling units on the same street.
Right.
One opened as early as 8 a.m. and announced that accreditation of voting was going to begin at 8:30. The other one that was just a few meters away didn't open until past 9. It seems that, some will say INEC has improved, but we have to wait to see what the figures are across the country.
True.
But what have you observed?
So, like I keep telling people, I think it's a process, and when we make comparisons with what's happening here and what's happening in some other democracies, I always try to urge ourselves to remember that just 30 years ago, it wasn't like that in those places. And for us to progress or succeed, we must all agree to acknowledge the fact that we have these deficiencies, but more than anything else, point them out and see how we can mitigate them moving forward. I think Nigerians are sometimes too in a hurry or too angry to understand that these things would improve with time.
Some say we're in a hurry because we have waited for way too long.
If you look around the world, there are democracies that are about 100 years old. Ours isn't that old. I agree that the world is almost moving together
the
now.
amalgamation itself is about 100 years old.
I mean, the amalgamation was not when the democracy started.
Yes, I know, but democracy is just a form of government.
And then do not forget, we kept going back and forth with the military and the democracy.
Yeah.
So if you want to really talk about steady democracy, it's about 24 years old. I think that's a young democracy. I also think that because we have the access to see what's happening around the world,
we also don't have to do 100 before
we don't have to, which is what I'm trying to explain. Because we have the ability to see what's happening around the world, we expect that to actually happen within our own space as well, which is understandable. But I think if you make comparison what happened 3 weeks ago and today, there's a lot of improvement. I went to that polling unit somewhere in Surulere today, and I won't lie to you, I spent 4 minutes and I had casted my vote. And I left and I went to the next poll because I actually came to Lagos as an observer. However, my polling unit still resides in Lagos. I used to live in Lagos for a very long time. So I just want to say one thing, and it's very important. There's also been a lot of complaints from around that people are unable to exercise the franchise, and I think that's also something we should really, look at and ensure that people are not denying the ability for them to express themselves, regardless of whoever.
Are you referring to voter intimidation?
Voter intimidation here and there, and then there's some other people who have actually complained about the fact that they do not even allow them get out, past certain gates. I've seen a lot of videos on social media, and then I keep saying some people have pushed that forward to say, why would INEC not go start arresting people? And I said the evidence has to be, full, evidence has to be robust for INEC to use that as, something to tender whenever they want to speak about anything.
Did you witness that at all?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, to some extent. You have some polling units with quite a number of youth, I would call them, standing by, doing whatsoever, and then you have people chanting and saying some other things. Some of these things can, in a way, amount to some form of intimidation. And, well, whether they know it or not, or they are just there, trying to catch fun, because there are some polling units you visit, there is music by the side, and there are foods, people are doing all sort of things, just ensuring, probably keeping themselves busy, waiting till the counting and all that. So there are actually, yes, of course, some polling units where you have pockets of these things happening. But in terms of violence, not, none that I have seen within the polling units that I visited.
It's
for
see
me,
no evil here.
it's
You must have picked those polling units intentionally.
No, but I went around. I went to over
Okay.
40 polling units this morning before I casted my vote. And to be honest, it was relatively peaceful. But then when I go back to the phone to look at the social media space, I'm seeing something else different. I went as far as Lekki, I went as far as Ajah, and then we drove back this way. Went into Falomo, went into Ikoyi, Parkview, and everywhere was peaceful. But then I go back to the phone, and there's violence, and I'm wondering where is it actually emanating from? And, even though the message is coming that, there's a particular political party that is asking other people not to do such and such, there's nothing to substantiate if indeed is that political party that has sent those people to intimidate.
Again,
So-
we have to establish the number of polling units that
Exactly.
exist across the country.
Exactly.
During the presidential election, there are way over 176,000.
Right.
So I also know that House of Assembly election is taking place across the country.
True.
So we still have as many as that.
Exactly.
So we now need to do maths
Right.
and find out how many of these polling units that have issues
Seem to be affected.
Yes, and how significant is that number
True.
to begin to tamper with the credibility of our
Absolutely.
polling? But how close are we to a point where election will remain a festival or a carnival? You mentioned there are places where there's free food, there's music, and then you just go in and vote and decide, and then the politicians will know that it boils down to my performance, whether I will get a re-election or not.
So this is what I think. I'm a politician here. I've contested in 2 different elections on high level in the last 4 years.
Did you win any of them?
No, not yet. Okay. I haven't won. And I think, again, it's a process. I think the fact that I'm able to come out to say I want to participate in this kind of exercise is commendable. But fundamentally, I think why it's looking like it's a do-or-die affair, because I keep hearing some people, it's not a do-or-die affair. Why are they going to push us around and all of that? It's a do-or-die affair because, number one, INEC has seen how some political parties have hiked the cost of forms to start with. INEC has seen how political parties would coordinate themselves and make sure that the primaries is solely dependent on how much money is being spread around. INEC will still sit down and see how campaigns are only being able to be conducted by giving people monies here and there so that they can actually vote for you. At the end of the day, someone who's running for a post as like a governor, for example, will tell you have spent about 40 billion naira just to win a governorship election. Tell me why it's not going to be a do-or-die affair.
Whereas there's a limit to spending.
Absolutely. So how...
By law.
By law. And if you ask INEC to tell us how much they think each candidate has spent, they do not have the data.
They do not have the data. Yeah.
And now if we were able to have this data, you now see that people can say, okay, fine, if I lose this amount of money for this exercise, no shaking, I will still survive. But by the time you have been stretched so much that you have spent so much money, it becomes a do-or-die affair for you, your sponsors, and everything that makes you up. And that is why we're having all of these issues and all of these problems. And people think that, it's just going to go away. It's not just going to go away. I think we should really look at that.
Well,
I agree with you that election is a process.
Yes.
And then we cannot only scream on election day.
Yes.
We should scream 4 years before election to find out if the electoral body is also monitoring the spending. I'm going to get to you very shortly, but we're following developments across the country. We began from the south. We went to the north, the northeast, I believe, and then we're now returning to the south. Let's turn to Delta State in Asaba, where Ekena Amechi is standing by. Ekena, it seems that sorting has already begun where you are, right?
Very well, sir. Sorting has
Go ahead.
actually
What's the
begun
update where you are?
in Delta State here. This is Yeah, we are in Asaba, the Delta State capital, and of course, sorting, as you rightly said, has begun after voting process have been completed by exactly 2:30 p.m. this afternoon. The voting started quite early. Our electoral officials arrive on time to ensure that they are here before the time of the start of the voting process, which is 8:30, and as early as 8:30, electors started arriving the polling units and exercising their franchise and casting their vote for their preferred candidate of the 17 governorship candidate. And of course, we have 29 seats for the House of Assembly polls. And as at 2:30, we heard that voting has completed, because as we observe in Delta North here that I am, Delta North Senatorial District, there is voter apathy, in the sense that not a lot of people that showed up in the February 25th presidential poll came out to exercise their franchise this time around. And in so many polling stations, the INEC official had to wait for people to come to cast their votes. Even as at 7:30, when we got to some polling units, the INEC official have set up their system and ready to start the exercise. But we can hardly see any voter or electorate at any of those polling units. But they arrived at around 8 and 8:30, and of course we know that. And then they start casting their vote. But so far, so good. Hello. So far, so good. We have seen a really voter apathy in Nifemi, and it's really not too good. I wonder what the results will be churning out in this governorship and House of Assembly polls. Will be far short from what we observe in the presidential, even though the presidential is still a far cry from what we used to observe in the previous election, whereby we have a very low turnout of a very low turnout of vote cast, as of 600,000, as against 2.8 million voters that have collected their PVC in Delta, and of course 3.2 million registered voters in Delta State. So it's quite an abysmal number in the presidential poll, not to talk of this one that we have seen from our observations so far, that there have been voter apathy in many polling units in Asaba. And then the election so far has been free from security incidents, but we observe in Irene where someone ran away with the beavers, damaged the beavers machine, and we, in some places in Delta Central as well, we found out that there was a place that two people, a particular political party agents, two of them were shot by security operative over yet to be a confirmed incident in that area. But apart from that, generally it has been very peaceful, and people have been conducting themselves very well. And from the electoral body, we have not seen any hitches so far from the beavers, from uploading and all that. Now they are collating. Let's see if they will actually upload the results via the beavers machine. But so far so good. We have been having a very hitch-free exercise right here, and as collation is going on right here at West End Primary Secondary School in Asaba, the Delta State capital. Nifemi.
Interesting development, Ikena. 3 weeks ago, voters were waiting on INEC officials. 3 weeks after, INEC officials are waiting for voters. Tables really do turn. But you talked about someone running away with beavers. Can you confirm what happened thereafter? That INEC replaced that device? What happened to voting in that particular polling unit?
For now, Nifemi, I cannot actually confirm. It's actually happened in Irene, in Ugele North local government area, and that is in Delta Central part of the state. And we have not really confirmed whether INEC has replaced the beavers, but according to their regulation, if such incidents should take place, they should be able to replace the beavers so that voting will continue. Let's hope that that's what they did there, to ensure that people are not disenfranchised with the fact that this particular election is witnessing low turnout of voter. And of course, I asked some people about why the low turnout turnout of electorate. And someone said, and I strikingly observed, that a lot of young people are actually absent in this election, because we saw in that presidential election that we have a lot of young people between the age of 18 to 30 coming out en masse to cast their votes. But we find out conspicuously absent in this election is those range of age group that are missing. Majorly, we have people from the elderly people and the middle-aged people, and not those young age brackets coming to cast their vote. And of course, so many people said that because of what the electoral body did in the presidential election is what is actually causing the voter apathy, and people are actually disappointed that whether they will come and vote in this election. And some people attributed it to the fact that the election was shifted from last week to this week. And even in some places, we find out that it actually affected the sales of people that are actually making bricks business in this part of in the election, because some people come out not just to vote, but vote and sell their goods. And for them, it's actually affected their turnout, their return, because of they didn't sell as much as they did in the presidential election on the 25th of February. Nifemi.
Ikenamechi live for us in Asaba, Delta North Senatorial District. Thank you, Ikena. We'll be back with you for more updates when you have them. Again, another report of voter apathy. I'm wondering, in those polling units that you visited, if you found out why people didn't come out as much as they did 3 weeks ago.
Yes, a lot of voter apathy this time around, no game saying, and that's the truth. Because in most of the polling units, you have the elderly people. The youth were conspicuously missing, this very time around. And reason being that some people said because they shifted, just like your reporter said. Some said because of what happened during the presidential election, and they had high hopes and INEC dashed their hope. Some said they cannot, they didn't want to wait because of the long time it took for them to vote the last time and counting and all that, because some polling units actually went into night, during the process the last time. And one of those polling units I visited, especially the one in Magodo, Tokumbo Macaulay, during the presidential election, I had to call the REC in Lagos State myself to report, what was going on there. And that was at 11 p.m. During the last election. And that was the time I put up a call to him. He answered, he took the call and said, of course, he's going to send down people to, to help out the process and everything. But that process they didn't conclude the process till around 5 a.m. in the morning, when some voted. But this time around, it's a different ballgame entirely. Tokumbo Macaulay, like I said, has about 3,160 registered voters. And as at 2 p.m., 500 had voted. And I didn't usually see the crowd that, I saw the last time. And, it made me question and ask a few people what is actually the matter, what happened. And so most especially the youth were absent this time around.
We'll talk about the youth shortly. What did you, find out as to the uploading of results on the INEC result viewing portal? Did it happen immediately after?
During the previous election?
No, this one.
This one.
Yes.
Yes, some polling units, have concluded and then they uploaded. While some, as at the time, if you visited the iRev then, some result has started, going into that particular portal. So
how come they ended voting before 2:30? Is that even right?
Well, one that I viewed...
What if I'm coming out by 2 to vote?
To vote. One that I viewed on the iRev was already posted there, but it was written cancelled. So whatever the reason is, that could be a challenge or whatever it is that had happened. But in Lagos State here, I think, because I was particular about what is happening in Lagos State, and for us to be able to have a fair share idea of what is going on at different areas of Lagos State.
You heard my colleague in Delta say he found out that young people didn't come out this time as they did last week. 3 weeks ago. Just how divided do you think we are politically right now?
I think it's a disconnect. For a lot of Nigerians, not just young people, the belief is that the concentration should be on the presidential election. Who becomes the president, and that is how my life is going to become better or not better. Is it from my region? Do we share the same religion? And all of those factors are the factors that determine how people get excited about going to vote for a president. But in reality, I think the voter education or election education should be around the fact that the people that are closest to the grassroots are the ones that you should even be more concerned about. The councillors, the chairmen, the House of Assembly members, who are your representatives, who are those that will speak on your behalf, who are the senators, and how much do you know them, so much so that they can come back to the constituency to ask the stakeholders and young people like yourselves what they want to talk about when they go back to Abuja.
Indeed.
Those things are important. But if you are now going to say, oh, I'm not going to be worried about all of that, I'm just going to be worried about the president is going to be a president for all and not some. But these guys are your own. And people must understand that these are the elections that they should take more seriously than any other one.
And there are things that your president can't do for you that your governor can do for you.
Absolutely.
That the member representing you at the House of
Absolutely.
Assembly
In fact,
can
your president might have to go through those people to
yes.
get to you.
Absolutely. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
For me, Mr. Buhari talked about voter education, and I think it's one area that we should look into critically as well, because after the presidential election, it's like everything went down. People need to know, people need to be aware, and there has to be continuous voter education. Did that happen? No, it didn't. Some agencies of government, who are supposed to be in charge of things like this, alongside with CSOs who, work under the voter education providers, did they do this after the presidential election, leading up to this, knowing that there is a postponement? And some people, it might, you look at it. Most times in this part of the world, we are very reactive. We're not proactive. Absolutely. And so we just want to talk about things when they already happened and what should have been done. Do we actually look at things critically to say, this has happened this way? How can we now reconscientize the people and talk to them for them to be able to come out, boost their morale, for them to be able to come back again to vote? That didn't happen. And I must also call out the National Orientation Agency. This is the arm of government that is supposed to do more with the people. How well have they done in this area? That's a question that needs to be answered maybe some other day, Nifemi.
I'm very glad you picked up with the National Orientation Agency. This is an arm of the government that has been designed to communicate with the people.
Absolutely.
And like I've been saying in the last few months, we're dealing with a generation of people that are unable to process information. And this is not to make anybody feel bad or feel little. It is just a challenge that we all have to come together.
Don't worry, they will come for you on Twitter.
Oh, yeah. This is just a challenge that we would all have to come together to see how we can surmount. Because I was telling people, I said, when I was growing up, I had very few teachers. And they were validated teachers. My mom, my father, my school teacher, one or two uncles and aunties who would come in, once in a while to just chip in one or two things, and then they disappear from my space. Yeah. But these were the people that molded me up. Now we're dealing with a generation where they got like 1 million teachers. Yeah. They just need to hold their phone, and they're being given too much information. And unfortunately, if they are tilting towards a particular individual or an influencer, and they now say, oh, I like what he has said, and they stick it to their heads, any other information that comes, they deflect it. Yeah. And now their inability to hold different kinds of information to actually weigh which one has superior objectivity now becomes a problem. Yeah. And so they don't have the time to process that, and they deflect. So I think, as you rightly said, the National Orientation Agency, the government, and everybody who really cares about what's going to happen in the future should start thinking of what we must do to help save the next generation and the kind of information they consume.
Let's turn now to Southeast Nigeria. Ivy Kano is standing by for us live in Ebonyi. Hello, Ivy. How are you doing? What's happening where you are? Well, we probably will get back to Ivy.
Yes, we have about 6 polling units here at Wife Central School. Now, most of these polling units have completed their voting and even counting, and they are just sitting to ensure that officials
We're having troubles getting across to Ivy for now. We may have to return to her for more updates as to what's
Million.
happening where she is. Let's get back to Ivy.
Collected PVC was 1.551. Okay, which makes it a total of almost 97.1 compliance. Most of the registered voters.
Ivy, hold on. Let us work on
PVC,
that connection so
means,
that we can hear you clearly, and also, get a complete grasp of all that has happened today in Ebonyi. We're talking about how people have reacted to the presidential election, possibly, a fallout effect on the governorship and House of Assembly poll. But just before you walked in, we were talking about the factors, that determination. I mean, other factors. But I want us to focus our attention to performance of government. Prior to the general election, we had the issue of food scarcity. There was cash scarcity, which they say that has now worked together for good, in such that people now didn't have money to give out for vote buying. Or did you notice any vote buying where you went?
Thank you very much. I didn't see. I didn't notice any.
Or maybe we're being outsmarted.
Yeah,
It is possible.
Yeah, well,
No. In all honesty, the cash scarcity really brought no cash to the fore. Nobody came to buy any votes. It was very clear how it used to be done before. People stand on the side, take a queue first, pick your money before you go and vote. But it's not happening now. And because the general public knows that you do not have cash,
Exactly.
they go to the polling unit with the intention not to hope to collect cash from anybody. There's no cash anywhere. So I think it's a great thing that has been done. I know we're feeling the brunt, but like I keep saying, there's no how we're going to fix all of the mess going
But
on
what if
with us.
someone got cash? It would be easy to induce voters because there's no cash.
Yes, I mean, but, where do you want to get the cash?
That's what I'm saying, that we are not, you can't be so sure that...
you can't be 100% sure.
You can't be 100% sure
Yes.
that nobody is giving cash in this election.
Yeah, if you have seen one, show me. No, where?
I haven't seen
People.
Let us, I haven't seen one. I think you got me there. Let's turn to North Central Nigeria. Tijesu Adewe is live for us in Jos, the Plateau State capital. Tijesu, what's happening where you are?
Yes, Nifemi, I'm standing at Jos North local government area. This is the COMEX polling unit, and voting has officially ended. Voting stopped at exactly 2:30, and as you can see behind me, sorting and counting has officially begun. Largely, the process was peaceful. We didn't have any record of violence all around the places, the polling units we visited across Jos Plateau State. As you can see, the domestic election observers are on ground. Party agents are also on ground to monitor the process to ensure that there is no hitches or whatever, or some sort of what do they call it now, the allegations of rigging, just to monitor the process and ensure that it's all smooth and peaceful. Everybody is on ground. Largely, people that we have spoken to, the election observers, say the process was free and fair, far from what it was in the presidential election. The voter turnout varied from polling unit to polling unit. Some polling units registered high turnout, while some registered low turnout. But right now, as it stands in the polling unit I am now, voting and sorting and counting is ongoing.
What's the comparative analysis for you in those polling units, particularly that you monitored during the presidential election? Would you say that the turnout improved this time?
Yeah, from the election observer that we spoke to, the domestic election observer that we spoke to earlier said it improved because during the presidential elections, it was quite low. INEC also registered some hitches. It was difficult for some INEC officials to get to their polling units on time. We saw the election process started late and all of that. But in this particular election, everything started very rapidly. It started at 8:30 on the dot in most polling units that we visited. voted. And what we saw is some polling units actually had a high turnout of voters, while some had low turnout of voters. The election observer we spoke to said some of these voters actually avoided the process in a sign of protest, saying that and they were not happy with the outcome of the presidential election, and so they just totally avoided the local election. While some of them actually looked forward, to this election, because it's a local election, is for them to determine who will govern the affairs of the state, and so they are very, very involved in the process, and so they came out, to exercise their franchise, and are monitoring very, very closely. This is the process. This is the level that they've actually looked forward to. The one of the electorate I spoke to earlier said it's not even really concerned about the voting. He casted his vote, but he's not really concerned about the voting. What he's actually concerned about is the collation process, what INEC would do, and if it actually meets up to their expectation, and if it will be far from what it was witnessed during the presidential election, or it will be the same thing.
What about security in Plateau? How safe was how safe was it for voters today in Jos?
Of course, Nifemi, Plateau State has had its fair share of insecurity in the past, but during this election process, surprisingly, it was very, very calm. Security agents were present. They were on ground. Over 10,000 officers were on ground to ensure that law and order is maintained. If you also notice behind me, you can see some security operatives still present to ensure that there is sanity in the process and there is no disruption. So it was largely peaceful. The citizens, the electorate, were law-abiding. They even call themselves civilized people. They don't like trouble. They don't like any form of trouble, and they try to abide by the law. They stayed on the queue and ensured that they casted their ballot. Some of them waited. They were actually littered all around here, but because of the sun, some of them had to go home, and they were left with the election observer, the domestic election observers, and the party agents, had to stay back to monitor the process. So the whole process, entirely from the polling units we were able to visit all around Jos Central, it's largely peaceful.
Well, after sorting, counting, and then comes collation, we're back with you, Tijesu, when you have more for us in Jos. Thank you so much for your contribution. Well, let's speak to the issues now. We were talking about whether performance will play a role in how people decide in this particular election. We have looked at the issue of ethnicity, religion. She talked about protest vote. Some people are not just quite pleased about how we turned out 3 weeks ago, and they want to come and vote someone else. How do you think this would affect performance as a key factor for those who are going to be elected in this election?
Yes. Well, it's already playing out. I must say, because after the last 3 weeks ago, most especially in Lagos State here, we saw a whole lot. We saw people who were vying for political positions for this election that is coming out now, going to places, talking to people, going there, being there physically.
Like never before.
Like never before. So there is that shift now, which we've seen it. The pictures are everywhere on social media. So many of these candidates now talking to people. And so this is how it should be. And then now, for the people themselves, it is also quite important for them to now understand that today's election is one that is close to home. And so for some people, yes, they want to protest, protest vote. But for some other people, they don't care. Whatever it is that has happened. And that is where we need some form of mindset reorientation and moral voter education for the youth in particular. Because I'm concerned about these people. Because all these things we're doing, we're going to be leaving Nigeria in their hands in the nearest future. So what role are they playing now? How are they learning? What are the things that are happening that they're seeing that they can actually learn from? Who is talking to them? And are they being fed with the right information? And just like he also said and alluded to, that if nobody is giving them the real information, they will be getting dozens and tons and thousands of information from the social media, whether it is disinformation, whether it is the right thing that they're supposed to be fed with. Once they have a phone, they get all this information. Now, who is also checking on the so-called social media influencers who these young people are looking up to and following? What are they feeding them with? So all of these make up, for what we are seeing today, for people either coming out, how well informed are they to know that today's election is equally as critical as that of 3 weeks ago?
I'm wondering if it will be too much of optimism to say that governance is not going to remain the same again. That, governors and elected public officials will now sit up and know that if they don't do well, they can actually be voted out, irrespective of what they do. But hold that thought. Let's return to North Central Nigeria. We have our correspondent in Benue State standing by. Let's find out very quickly what's happening there. What's the situation right now? If you can hear me, I'm asking what's happening right now. It's 5 minutes to 4.
Yes, right now I'm in one of the headquarters of Taka local government. Right here, this polling unit, it's counting that's going on. They're already counting the votes. And I'm here with the
Well, perhaps for the first time, we're going to be hearing from someone a person with a disability in this particular election. Some of the very exciting news that came in preceding this election is that part of the Electoral Act of 2022 that gave room for more access for persons with disabilities to participate in this election. There are now braille alternatives for voting papers. You can now be assisted by someone to be able to access the voting cubicle and vote. And you can also, the Electoral Act also now, permits that people with disabilities can even now vie, for positions. We'll get back to Benue State in a short while for more details in that regard. But we were talking about the optimism as to whether or not politicians have gotten the message this time.
I hope. We keep hoping that, upsets like this would make people wake up and gear them up towards the realities, and that if you do not perform, you'll be booted out. I'm also hoping that people will try to see how communities and spaces will try to see how they can now use up some of the electoral laws that can help you recall certain political officers, should they not be living up to expectations as well. By the time the people are able to explore all of these tools at their disposal, I assure you a lot of people would wake up and, and start doing the right things. But definitely the 2023 election has really changed the dynamics of politics in the country. I like the fact that you pointed out that in the last 1 or 2 weeks, we've seen some candidates, go into every little corner to show themselves and to let the people know that, look, I really, really desire your support. So that means indeed the beavers and the introduction of technology into the system has really reduced the optimism that politicians used to have with regards to their ability to manipulate the system.
Please hold that thought for a while. Mayowa Okwato is back in Benue State. Please go ahead, Mayowa. Mayowa, go ahead with the updates from Benue.
I'm even here with Mercy Kwako, who will give us, she's an observer, and she'll give us details of what she has observed so far.
Hello, ma. Mercy present and to observe from short room. So they are come at 7:30 and the INEC officer arrived 8 o'clock to the election, and the accredited people, they dispose the materials to the voters to understand that the materials are intact. So the voters started, and we started voting Now we are counting the voting. There were no problem.
All right, thank you very much. We've also been to Guma local government and also Vandekia local government, where we've witnessed the governor vote and also the candidates of the All Progressive Congress and the People's Democratic Party vote. And they've all commended the process and said it's all good.
Fix this network. I was just going to say, be careful before you criticize INEC, about this technology of a thing. Sometimes technology can just decide to go another route entirely. But let's return to South Nigeria, where Ademola Lawrence is standing by in Akwa Ibom State. Ademola, how did it go today? Ademola Lawrence, what's the situation where you are right now? Well, while we're waiting for Ademola to connect with us, let's just find out precisely what these issues are, because, we've talked about performance, which should be key. I mean, if you do not do well in 4 years, the electorate should be able to say, thank you for wasting our time.
Yeah.
You can return to your father's house now. Let's try someone else, right?
Yes.
I mean, people should not perpetuate themselves in office if they haven't done the job. It's as simple as if you're employed in an organization.
Yes.
There is a performance index. If you fail, they warn you. And I think that's why it's 4 years. They keep warning you 1 year, the second year, they warn you again, and then they boot you out. But then, that hasn't been the situation. Since 1999, we've had a situation where incumbents perpetuate themselves in office. Now, let us look at this relative to the credibility of the process thus far. We have seen a situation in this country where an opposition won the presidential election. It happened for the first time in 2015. Would you say that things are getting better if you look at it from that prism?
Yes, I must say things are getting better because there had been a lot of improvement in terms of, on the process itself. Before, we used to have the permanent voters card, and then you have, but now we have the beavers. And then if you look at, along the line, what else do we, have next after beavers? What comes next? So people are also anticipating, and we're hoping that one day we'll get to that place where you would sit at your comfort zone and vote.
Indeed.
And so we're looking at where continuous improvement in the process, because that gives the people hope. That gives the process some form of credibility, because it's when people have that hope and believe in the process and understand that, yes, INEC is actually for the people to make sure that the process brings in the best hand, to come and take the position. Because looking at the work, it's like you rightly said, employment. You're coming. Are you a servant? Are you just coming to lord over the people? We should be advocating for servant leadership. And that's what we are looking at. And I think we're shifting towards that area at this time, because the people are ready to say that we matter. We can put you in and take you out.
All right, let's continue the conversation here in the studio. I'd like us to just quickly look into the issue of inclusion in this election.
Right.
We're hearing that only about 17 women made it to the National Assembly, I think 3 senators. But you look at this particular election, there are some 837 candidates who want to be governor, but only 24 of them are women. And then you wonder if we are close to having the first female governor in this country. The only time it happened was when someone was impeached and then the woman had to stay there for a few hours, so to speak.
Right.
How close are we to that reality?
Before I respond to this, I also want to respond to the fact that we're excited that maybe with the outcome of the 25th of February's election and what we're seeing now, it's beginning to look like, politicians would really, really go on their knees to ask the people and not impose it on the people. And also, with what has happened, we will see politicians really do the work and not expect that they will manipulate when the time comes. It also, my fear is, I hope that when we come to 2027, we wouldn't have retraced our steps backwards to say, oh, we've lost all of that momentum in the progress arena, and now we're talking about something else again. Because I think one of the things that has actually helped these elections in 28 and the one for the 20 of today is the fact that there have been no vote buying. There have been no cash. And so cash, at the end of the day, no matter how well you want to put the process, once that money comes to the fore, a lot of people are unable to stand their grounds. So if that is missing right now...
For economic reasons.
Exactly, and stomach infrastructure.
Indeed.
So all of these things are real, and this is what dissuades people from truly upholding their mandate or pushing forward what they want to push forward. Indeed. So if you're talking about women not being in the fore, or the percentage of women from what we are seeing is about 12%, it looks really, really weak. I would like to think that again. Now they're going to say, oh, fine, we've seen a process that can actually protect us, that can actually defend us, and all we need to do is put together a proper manifesto and see how we can, persuade the people to look in our direction, and hoping that some of those women that have already been able to get into those offices would do justice for the people or to the people, so much so that people might start saying, you know what, we want women now and not men. All of these things are things that, women have to look at and hopefully see how things can happen differently. I think young people have had the opportunity, and I think we've not done so well.
Women say it's their time. The big question we've been asking is, do women vote for women? Because when you look at the distribution of voters in this election, there are quite a number of women who come out to vote. Apart from those who are registered to vote, when you look at the queues, especially in many parts of the country, you see quite a number of women who come out. You wonder if this is the system that is not giving them the room for expression. But we're going to talk about that very shortly. But Solomon seemed to have come up with a very important topic that we must consider, the issue of false news.
Right.
I think the NBC was right to have said that no partisan publication 24 hours before election. Usually a day before election, you begin to see some letter-headed paper.
Right.
Somebody has the court has just nullified the candidacy of someone. This is the generation that wants IRF to work, but it's also the generation that peddles fake news the most, post fake results. How do we, begin to sanitize, particularly the social media?
I said something, and I think that's one of the biggest undoing of this particular administration. You've got the Voice of Nigeria, you've got the NOA, and you let it to do nothing. The NOA is supposed to be that one space that you would have to always go to verify. Is it true? Is it not true? How do we react to something like this? And also, the presidency should have actually made it, taken it upon himself to give, even if it's going to be daily press briefings with selected journalists, all journalists. You just have to get your entry into the space, and they talk to you. Is it true that it's not true? Not from this government. Is this? And then at some point, people will now realize that they do not need to focus on any other place but this place. Let's just wait till 6 p.m. We're going to get the truth from all of this brouhaha going on in the space. But, the fact that you're going to just relax and allow the other space to keep pushing out nonsense, it's going to be nonsense all over the space. And like I said to you earlier, the generation does not have the ability to process this information. So whatever comes, they lock it in. Once they lock it in, that is it. Nothing can push it away. Anything that comes, they deflect it. And they get misguided.
Mr. Julius, voting has now ended in most parts of the country. We're hearing news that accreditation of voting actually started earlier than it did 3 weeks ago. We're getting reports from South, Southeast by a team of reporters. As we speak right now, sorting and counting is taking place across many polling units. Let's turn out to Northeast Nigeria, Gombe precisely, where correspondent Larry Adeyemi is standing by. Hi, Larry. What's the situation right now where you are?
Where that has the largest
have to fix that poor audio and then get back for more updates in Gombe. Gentlemen, I have Ahmed Buhari and Opera Julius. Thank you so much for staying the course on the program. It's interesting development that we've witnessed thus far, particularly as to the biggest challenge we're hearing right now is voter apathy. There are pockets of violence here and there, but generally, our team of reporters are saying that it's not bad. after all, particularly relative to previous election. But I want us to speak to the performance that we're talking about earlier. Let me come to you now. Do you think that the electorate is, accurately evaluating performance for incumbents and capacity for those who want to topple them, who wants to take their office? Do you think that we have a comprehensive system that is giving the electorate the privilege of accurately analyzing, these factors?
Thank you very much, Nifemi. I must tell you that a fair share in terms of the number of electorates, are obviously not aware of how to evaluate the performance of the incumbent, especially those, currently in power. And I must also not blame them that much. Because Mr. Buhari, talked about news flying here and there, social media and all of those things. Do they have the right tools to actually be able to evaluate who is giving them, those tools, who is making provision for those tools? Now we'll go back to the National Orientation Agency. Sorry, I have to just quickly go there.
I mean, they're in trouble today. You guys have mentioned them like 10 times.
And I must say that they are the agency that are saddled with the responsibility of communicating government policies to the people. And when they do so, not only in English, which is our lingua franca, but also to break it down to different mother tongues. Do we see this happening? Because this takes the message home to that person that cannot ordinarily understand English. And aside that also, they are saddled with putting the people, especially the voters, making them abreast of what is going on, especially in the area of the positive information and things that are right, that are going on within the electoral process, what should be, how it should be, when it should be, and all those. Now, so if the people have this, you expect to have a turnout of people who are well informed. But you will not blame the people when you have not properly educated them. You have not properly informed them, and they do not have the right tools that are necessary for them to make good judgment and to be able to hold incumbents accountable. So that is what we're seeing happening presently.
Let me come to you now, Mr. President, because
Mr. President,
you answer the same name with the president. Perhaps you will know more than any of us. You will carry the burden of whether this administration has done well or not, because when you mentioned it, oh, you are Mr. Buhari, perhaps you can tell whether, the Buhari administration has really performed well. But the president kept talking about leaving a legacy of credible election. It meant a lot to him. For the first time in a long time, we saw him, we saw the Electoral Act, being worked on and rejigged. And there were great intentions, in the days leading to this election. Appointed officials could not participate in primary election without first resigning. We also saw the introduction of the biometric voter accreditation system, which many say is a game changer. But would you say that he would have left that legacy that he desired after this exercise?
I think so. And yeah, a lot of people call me Mr. President, not because I share the same name with him, but because I did contest for the office of the president when I was much younger. But to be fair to Buhari, with regards to his desire to see that credible elections hold before he leaves office, I think he has done nearly everything humanly possible under the Nigeria situations, to see that. In fact, he has done a lot, to be fair. But the problem is, it's not just one person that can actually help all of these things happen. There are a lot of other things.
And not many electorates know that.
Yes, exactly. And that is why
we put so much
that is why we're
on
still going to say the NOA's responsibility it's true. This is your government. You are a government tool. Your reason for existence is to help educate the people about what your system is trying to achieve. Let them break it down for the people. Let them understand why and how these things have been put in place for the betterment of the Nigerian people. But they haven't done that. So, again, to complete from where Mr. Okpara stopped with regards to no indices or the right information hasn't been given to the Nigerian people to quantify how well, candidate or contestants have done to see if they can return them to office or to bring new ones to replace them. The people would have to use certain criteria to decide.
Yeah.
Now they now use religion, ethnicity, political party, ideological affiliation,
Helping us?
social status, age bracket, gender sometimes.
Can we add naira scarcity to that list?
Naira scarcity now falls for everybody. It's on the same level with everybody. So nobody's going to use that. But these things I just mentioned have been the things that we, the electorate, eventually now use to decide, not necessarily whether or not they have performed. So nothing to use for performance, but we'll go back to those factors that have always divided.
There's also power rotation, which has dominated the conversation
Ethnicity,
for a long time.
religion, political party, ideological affiliations, gender, age bracket, social status. These are the things that we use. And so even power rotation is part of that. Power rotation has nothing to do with performance.
Does it get to a point where, irrespective of your performance, people just want a new party, a new name in government? Does that mirror human behavior and the pattern of human?
Yes, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with, I keep telling people this, it's like a graph. You go to the very top part of the graph, there's nowhere else you can go but where? Down. So if you get there and people are like, oh, we're tired of all these goodies, let's try something horrible, or let's try something else, and they decide to try, and it comes, oh, no. Next 4 years, we're going back up with the other guys. It's fine. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So I think the Nigerian people really need agencies like the NOA to help them to understand how to decide and how to think, how to decipher this information, how to build it up.
Nifemi, I must also say, sometimes, we're quick to blame these agencies, and how well are they funded? Because sometimes we're quick to talk about the people
that matters.
That matters. So it's also something that we need to push to the table of the government. How well have you funded NOA for them to effectively carry out these functions? Because NOA are expected to have offices at every local government in this country. Now, so we need to look at that area. And if government can boldly come out to say, I have funded NOA so well, but now we'll now look at, okay, good, how well have they utilized the funds?
And if you're not doing your job, change them.
And if you're not doing your job, like you said, change them. You're the employer.
Who wants to preside over an overeducated people? They will just wake up on election day and vote you out because they know too much. Maybe the idea of keeping people ignorant is also a strategy of the elite, right? Just the same way illiteracy and ignorance has always been key, because come election day, they just need to give you a little amount of money and tell you who to vote for.
Right.
Isn't that valid as well?
Right, valid.
That's quite valid. It's quite valid. And I would take you back to the conversation on women's participation in elections as well. Because if you look at it, in some offices, top-notch corporate offices, we have women who are doing great things. Why don't we have them in politics? Have we thought about this? In Senegal, you have about 57% of women, in politics. In Rwanda, you have 67 of them. In Nigeria, you have 4%, 4.1, according to the UN. And that is, very, very appalling. Now, come to political parties. How have they, on their own, been able to ensure that women, understand their ideology, participate, give them free hand to participate, and be part of the process? How many women can afford to buy political party forms? Thank God that we have, a stakeholder from that, particular group here, to tell us how easy had it been, for women to purchase tickets to be part, to be part of the process, to vie for these political positions.
Absolutely.
And these are critical issues that we need to begin to look at.
It's important to know that in the last presidential National Assembly election, we had over 900,000 invalid votes. I mean, that's enough votes to make you a governor, or a senator. I mean, that's, if you get that vote as a member of the House of Assembly, they will just make you the speaker the moment the House resumes. But we are going now. Let us just speak very quickly to, the amount of voter awareness and voter education deficit that we're dealing with, even at this time in our electoral history.
Thank you, Nifemi. It's a pain for some of us that work with agencies that carry out voter education. And so we have our work cut out for us. We have a lot more work to do in the area of educating the masses on how to vote correctly. Like what Sarah just reported is, very like a joke, very interesting.
Mr. Buhari, let me just get your final.
We have our work there.
Your parting words on this.
I'm glad. I think it's a process. I think we're progressing. I think we're getting better. I just hope that the next time we're going to be coming to sit down to talk about the 2027 elections, we're going to be saying we've done even better than 2023, not a regression.
Are you still planning to run for president again?
Let's see how it goes.
I mean, I'm wondering if Nigerians will want to have another Buhari as president. So it'll be interesting.
You never know.
The younger version this time.
They've had two Bushes here in America.
Ahmed Buhari, politician, public affairs analyst, Opara Julius, domestic observer. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you very much.
It was a good company.
Thank you very much.